count in three, two, one. That's the good thing about having your own YouTube show and stuff like that, because and stuff online is I can be a little fun before we get super serious. But we are live. Welcome back to another episode of the Hip Politics Podcast, Hip Politics TV Live. Really excited to for this one today. There's been so much going on. So much been going on in the world. We've had a beautiful, big, horrendous bill passed this week, at least in the House, that really kind of lines up what's really at stake here for American people, for millions of folks across the country, whether you voted for Trump or not, whether you voted or didn't vote. This impacts you. And when I'm trying to learn more about these things, obviously I do the reading, I kind of watch all the news, get all the CBO estimates and all those things. But sometimes you just got to talk to people who are on the ground and really understand this. And this seems like a major inflection point uh, for for politics and for people. There's actually something to talk about, whether you're for or against it, which means this is really going to be a turning point, not just in the lives of many Americans, but this is also a turning point in politics as what the Democratic Party really needs to step up and be able to talk and really educate people, and then hopefully rally around to maybe to win back and bring back our country. But when I'm thinking about how do we fight back, how do we message, what's really at stake here, there's only one person I always call, text, or have to bring into the fold on these conversations, and I'm honored to have her here today. A friend of many years, a colleague, but a respected voice both throughout politics and in business. Probably the only person who served as a communications director, both for a Speaker of the House, as she served as a longtime communications director for Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, former Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, as well as the sitting Vice President as the first communications director for Vice President Kamala Harris. Uh, who I'm talking about is a regular on your airwaves and your TV, whether it be CNN, MSNBC. Most recently, she had a really fiery podcast interview on Politico. Uh, I want to welcome to the stage and welcome to Hip Politics Live, Miss Ashley Etienne. How are you doing, Ashley?
Hey Cam, how are you?
I'm doing well. Sorry, I don't. And let me
Good.
a little. Stevie, no, but my list is getting dry. Like, you got too many accolades and things that I had to say and so forth.
It's true.
Um,
It's true.
and
God
too
has
many
blessed me.
accolades. Thank you. Ashley, I brought you in today, and I know we wanted to talk, and we've been in hearing a lot of the talk and conversation around what happened. It's called the Big Beautiful Bill, as it's being called, but I think this is. I want to kick the conversation off here. Is that we're a little over maybe 120, 130 days into the Trump presidency, and with that, Trump learned from the last time. He spared no time, no expense. Got Elon Musk in there, got his Doge in there. Start doing things both things in the government, making cuts, firing tens of thousands of people, really shaking stuff up. It feels like he has a spaghetti at the wall approach, where it's something new every day. And these are things he could do through executive orders. So that doesn't mean they're actual laws; they're just orders. They're things that could potentially be reversed in the future. But this is probably one of the most seminal moments that just happened this week, and the first step in that process that the House of Representatives passed in the heat of the night. Obviously, when the most people are watching, what was that, like 10:30, 11 p.m. on a Sunday night, were able to pass a budget bill. And it's always been said, if you want to find out what someone cares about, see what they fund, look at their budget and what you put, it really sets your priorities. And this massive budget bill is one of and is being called a big beautiful bold bill. I think is one of the most concrete things, at least in this process, that the Democrat and Republican parties both are trying to message for. On the Republican side, we're trying to message against. But this really sets the stage, I think, for what we can argue about, because there's so many different things in here that are either being cut or being funded. that this becomes a law. This is no longer just about Trump. This is something that everyone who votes for it has to wear, and I think is an opportunity, hopefully, for the Democratic Party to get a little more spine, really coalesce around their messaging. But I wanted to bring you in there, um, just to, most recently, like I said, you were on Politico, kind of talking about the messaging and and talking about the rallying that the Democratic Party needs to do, or the lack of leadership that you've seen. And this, to me, gives them something to rally around. So, what were your initial thoughts when you saw this pass? When you've seen kind of how this first few days of trying to rally around this to get people awake and like, hey, this is what's really at stake here, because this hasn't passed fully yet. This hasn't gone to the Senate, hasn't been signed into law, so there's still some time to push back. But that we're in that critical space where I think, to save a lot of our rights, save a lot of our money, save a lot of our country, um, we need the party to be able to push back and educate people. So, talk to me about what were your initial thoughts as what you've seen play out over the last week.
I mean, I've had a couple of initial thoughts, not just one. And one was we've sort of seen this nightmare rodeo before. This is not the first time we've seen the Republican Party not only squeeze as much money as they can out of the federal government, but really punish average working Americans to be able to give a tax write off to the richest people in the country. I mean, the thing that I'm most always shocked about is that Republicans really, and this is one of those same similar efforts. I hate to sort of say it like this. There's no other way I can really phrase it. Is they use people, poor people, working people. Trump won the election off the backs of those individuals, and they use them as tools to get elected, and then they punish them at the end of the day. Those are the people that are hurt the most by Republican policies. If you look across the country, the dirty little secret is that the poorest, most least educated states in the union are red states. If you look at this particular bill and just take Speaker Johnson's district, for example, and the impact that it's going to have on not just his district, but Louisiana is incredibly devastating. There are 40% of his constituents depend on Medicaid. The state it will stand to lose $4 billion in those projects that you spoke about earlier, in investments in clean, green energy projects all over the state. And so it's what I'm most fascinated by is the fact that like this bill really hurts the people more than anyone else that actually supported him. And if you look at all the statistics, the percentage of people that voted in higher numbers for Trump this cycle than last cycle are working class people who don't have college degrees. Those are the people again that were the foundation for his win, and those are going to be the people that are going to be hurt the most by this. The other thing I would add is, we have to put this in its full context. It's not just this bill that's devastating, but it's also the fact that Trump's come in and trying to undermine multiple federal agencies, as you stated, firing tens of thousands of federal workers. Not only does that mean more people on the unemployment rolls, but it also means that services aren't being delivered to us in a sufficient, adequate way. That's what that also means in the long term, that you don't have people at Social Security Administration that's taking your call, that you don't have people that are, manning the National Security Agency. I mean, he's talking about cutting NSA and all these other, not just, again, all these services that really make the country strong and prosperous. He's undermining all of that. And then I would say third to that, which I was shocked by this week, is just the blatant corruption, the money that the Trump organization is has what should I say, has, I would say, raised is probably the best way to describe it. But the money that the Trump family and organization has made over the past 120 days is shocking, upwards of tens of thousands of dollars. I mean, his children went and advanced his Middle East trip to lay the predicate for getting deals, not for the American people, not for me or for you, not for our own protection, our national security. family in a whole nother scale in a much more blatant way. So that's my sort of three reactions. One, the people that are going to get hurt most are the ones that he used this nightmare over and over before. The money never trickles down. You're squeezing every dollar out of the federal government, out of working class people, out of the markets that you can to give to rich people. And the third is the blatant corruption on the part of the Trump family to
Yeah,
exploit this moment
yeah.
and the White House.
One of the questions I had, and it strikes me as so many of the people, and we'll show this later, but and link to this article just talks about the amount of people who are voting for Trump and voting for the Republicans that feel like they're just flat out voting against their interests. Um, do you think it's that people don't want to perceive themselves as quote unquote poor? And we use that term poor and working class because, like, there's billions of dollars being cut from SNAP benefits. Like SNAP benefits are the food and assistance program that so many folks use. The majority of people on SNAP are not black. But it feels like there's
Yeah.
that it's a signal that the working poor and SNAP and food stamps and some Medicaid, which helps kind of the some of the poorest folks or the people who are making under $50,000, and people in maybe in their mind or the narrative is that that's for minorities, that's the black and brown people, even though the majority of the people in all these different government assistance programs nationwide are Caucasian Americans. um, but I'm curious to, like, is that what it is that people would consistently vote for both the party? There when you even see some of the reporting, I'm sure most people don't understand half the things that are in this bill and how they
Yeah.
actually affect them. But that's one of the things that really I think shocks me, that hey, you're voting for a party or you're actively supporting that there's going to be less dollars coming into your house every month to buy food. There's going to be less dollars coming into your house to be able to take care of yourself or your grandfather or your grandmother, or things if you're on these Medicaid assistance. You already make less than $50,000 a year, or you already make less than $75,000 a year, and these tariffs that are being slapped on this stuff when you already are trying to save money at Walmart.
Totally.
And Walmart
Totally.
is telling you like, "Hey, we're about to pass that on to you. I don't care what Trump tells us." Like, that to me feels like I just can't understand that disconnect of like, I don't have to like one party or the other, but if somebody is literally saying they're going to cut things that I depend on every month, why am I still like almost blindly supporting them?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple different factors. I think there are people who don't believe, you know, being middle class, being it's all to some degree relative to where you are in the country. So I do believe there are some people who don't believe that they fall into a category of being middle to lower class. I do think that that is a factor. The other biggest factor, I think, is that most people, although they say they were voting on economics, weren't voting on economics. We've seen this trend happen, for decades, where people are voting against, specifically people in red states are voting against their own economic interests. So one has to assume that it's not the economics that's driving your decisions when it comes to who you vote for. I think the third and the biggest thing that I think we're underestimating, and you and I are in this field, so we know it intently more than the average person does, is that there is a machine at work. There are people who are sort of what I would call drinking and lost on the Kool-Aid. There are people who are living in alternate universes where the inputs that they're getting are corrupted. People are telling them, they turn on Fox News, they turn on Sinclair, wherever they live in the country, and they're being fed bad information. They pick up their phones and in their feeds, it's mis and disinformation, all of this stuff that they're being fed. It really clouds their judgment and perspective on where they sit in the world, what's happening in the world, and what's true and what's not true. I mean, the first thing, and this is why I think we never given Donald Trump enough credit, is that he understands the value of manipulation better than anyone else. I always say, Trump sort of reminds me of my favorite line in the Austin Powers movie. I can't remember which one it was, but when Dr. Evil was frozen and then they bring him back and they defrost him and he turns to number two and he says, "What have you been doing all this time?" And number two said, "Well, I bought up all the media." And Dr. Evil says, "Well, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. Why would you do that?" And he said, "Because if you control the inputs, you control the outputs." Trump understands that. That's why he bought in Zuckerberg. That's why Elon Musk bought X, right, to manipulate the algorithms. All of these things are happening at the same time. The confluence of things that I think have people really lost in the sauce and not living in their own reality. But one thing that is true is no matter where you see yourself on the economic scale, if it was more about the black and the brown people than it was about your own economics, the reality is this particular economy is going to and is affecting everyone from top to absolute bottom. We've lost trillions of dollars in the markets. That's in people's retirement funds. To your point, the tariffs are increasing costs with every day. You've got an uncertainty that exists and the chaos that exists that is causing markets to crash all over the country and then all over the world. And then you've got the situation with this particular bill where people are going to be squeezed on every end. That's the situation we're about to see and experience now. And the difference between this administration and the last one when Trump was in office is now this is coming very early in his tenure. So it will be very clear who is actually to blame. You can't blame Joe Biden. You can't blame the Democrats. Can't blame transgender, whatever the immigrants, whatever they sort of always default to. It's going to be squarely on Donald Trump's shoulders and Republican shoulders. So it does create this opportunity for Democrats to really make this case that this is who these guys are. They've always been these people. They could care less about you. They will come in, lie, cheat, and steal to get your vote. But then they pass policies that are against your own interests, not just your national security interests, but your economic interests. And that's the case that we've got to make. That again, the world is more expensive, the world is more chaotic and more dangerous under Donald Trump, and the American people are paying for it. That's the message that we have to actually, as Democrats, go in and promulgate from red to blue states to red to blue districts. And I think Trump actually has done this better than anybody else. If you look at all the data and the statistics about the percentages of black and brown people that are increasingly voting for Donald Trump, it is mind-boggling. The fact that there was one statistic, if you don't mind me pulling it up, one statistic that said that GOP, the Republicans had a gain in 193 of 200 predominantly black counties. That is staggering. So what Trump's tactic always is to go into Detroit, to go into the Bronx, to go into black communities and say, first off, what do you have to lose? Your life hasn't changed. Secondly, he only wants 2%. He doesn't need 6%. He's like, I'm going to take two here. I'm going to take two from the Bronx, take two from Southern California. I'm going to take two from Detroit. I'm going to take two from Texas, wherever it is. 2 plus 2 plus 2 always equals more. And so that's really how he operates. And that's how he's been able to make some headway, is that he goes into these places that we don't go into, speaks directly to what people's concerns are. He sort of draws a wedge between us and those voters, and then really speaks to the reality of their existence. And that's how he peels them off. And we just don't do that. But this is a moment, to your point, for us to really lean in a more aggressive way and do things differently as a party.
Thank you, Ashley, for president, or at least for party leader.
At least for party leader, right?
At
But
least,
you know what I mean about that. I mean, like, if you read all these articles now that are talking about the conservative apparatus they're building, the media apparatus, I mean, the whole point of that is to misinform, ill-inform the American voter, to
so
have them thinking that the reality that they're experiencing in their pocket and the reality that they're seeing with their eyes isn't real. I mean, that's what I think is most fascinating. That's the areas in which we're getting our ass kicked as a party.
my my thinking here is, or my understanding, it is, we are, I think, getting our butts kicked as a party. I think the brand,
Yes, don't worry.
and
I
I
mean,
hate that
Sunday.
it's a brand thing, but it is a brand thing because it's not like the Republican brand is super strong, but maybe the Trump brand is super strong. But I think there's two things. One, they don't give a damn.
Yeah, they don't have a brand right now,
They don't
honestly.
even need
They
that.
just-
No, I'm not talking
they
about Democrats. I'm saying the Republicans don't really.
That's what I'm talking about. They don't have a brand right now. In fact, they're going through their own identity crises right now. But what they're doing better than us is they're again continuing to speak directly to people's concerns. The other thing that I think Trump is doing is he's building a broad coalition. He doesn't really give a damn what your policy ideologies are. He's like, I'll take RFK and the women who care about vaccines and all these other issues, bring them into the fold. I mean, he's building a broad coalition that really isn't grounded in any set of principles other than winning and other than Donald Trump. And it's working. It's really the most fascinating thing I've ever seen in American politics.
I'm gonna. The question I have is, what is? Have you diagnosed? Because we often leave with these facts, and we're gonna. I can tell you that what's gonna happen. We're gonna fact people to death. Oh, this
Yes.
71% of this group is losing. We're cutting $30 billion here. And that's gonna affect this millions of people. I think we're gonna fact people to death. The facts roll over people's heads. People are going to feel the real world impact. However, wherever this bill lands in reconciliation and actually gets executed, because it takes time, even though it's a big messaging war right now, there's no election next week. There are some primaries, there are some elections this fall, most notably in Virginia, New Jersey, other places of that nature. But there's no election next week. There's no way to really litigate this and get people in and out of, like, the people who are making this impact in and out of power immediately. But what and so there's enough time for us to fact people to death, things roll out, and then they come up with a new messaging plan that, like, to your point, the inputs in media, the inputs in how their voting base actually sees this and who they seek to blame, is something that they can probably recover from. And by they, I mean, like, Republicans and GOP can recover from. And then this is also, there's a huge party of people who are just checked out. They're not voting either side. They may not like one thing that's happening. They may not, but they're not actually participating in the process. They're not going to school board meetings. They're not knocking on their members of Congress's door. They, if anything, they may disproportionately look at their governors and mayors and say, the people closest to them in government, and say, hey, you're not supporting us, even though they may not have that same power and funding to be able to do that. So what I'm asking is, like, what is the what are you diagnosing as, like, the sustained feeling that needs to come out of this? Because we're gonna, I think I've already seen it, like, all these factoids about this is what this bill cuts, this is what this bill cuts. We hear so many big facts that, like, that's proven not to be an effective messaging tool, or necessarily an overarching effective plan to get people to vote a different way, to get people to mobilize. It's about when people, it's a heart thing, it's a gut thing, it's people have to feel something. And I think for the most part, people don't feel like one party is fighting back. They don't feel it. And there's it's that's a very subjective thing to do, and to measure. But I'm curious to, like, what is that what is your diagnosis on, like, how do we make people feel like we're fighting back, even if the law is still going to be the law that comes out of this, whatever this ultimate budget bill, and what the cuts are, what the cuts are. And it's not that we don't need to educate and inform people, but people don't feel it. Like, I've been spending so much time outside of the DC bubble this year, and I realize, like, the number one thing is people just don't feel like this other group is fighting back. Like, they see the headlines, they see real friends and family losing jobs, but they don't feel like somebody's fighting back for them. But then you go into Democratic social media and stuff. Hey, they're arresting. They're getting arrested. They're pushing back. They're lining up facts about, like, hey, do you know, trying to keep people informed in the best way they know. But I don't think the average person feels like somebody's fighting on their behalf. Like, talk to me about how we get that feeling back of fighting.
That's such a good question, Cam. I mean, I think there's a couple of things that, I ran the opposition for Nancy Pelosi during Trump 1.0. she and her team called me back from the Obama White House, and the first thing she did was she sat me down and said, um, we have to win back the House. I have to become the Speaker. We have to lay the foundation to win the White House. What are your frameworks for Donald Trump? So I laid out the frameworks for Donald Trump on day one when I got back. And then what I slowly started to do was to coalesce, develop an entire apparatus, coalesce the apparatus around those frameworks. And that apparatus was an inside outside sort of strategy. We coordinated with state elected officials, mayors, governors, all the outside groups, the inside outside game, NAACP, LCCR, NEA, any big organization with a major membership. We coordinated with them on a weekly basis. And what we did was not just coordinate the messaging. So you're creating this communications apparatus that's creating an echo sort of chamber, and we're all saying the same things. But what it did was it enabled us to go to a broader swath of the American voters with that same particular message from trusted validators and surrogates. And we reached people in ways that we couldn't on their own message, where they were, on their own issue, where they were, in voices that were trusted within those communities. So what I learned was coordination was key. Then coordination gets to discipline. And then the third most important point is dissemination. What is the mechanism by which we get the message out? I think people are already starting to feel it. I think they're, to your point, they're starting to feel the weight of the economy. I hate to be a snob about this, but I just went and bought a mother who I love in my life a bottle of champagne. It cost me $20 more than it did a month and a half ago. So I think people are starting to already feel the effects of a failing economy. But to your point, I think what they need is for it to be contextualized, for them to understand the magnitude of what we're talking about. And it's not just one bill. It's not just tariffs. It's all the above. It's not just tax cuts. It's all the above. It's a philosophy. It's an ideology. All of that, right? These people don't care anything about you. They will lie, cheat, steal to get your vote, and then they legislate against you. So all of that has to be contextualized for people. And then what we have to do is to really aggressively point the finger where it's deserved. And we don't have at this point the coordination, the discipline, and the distribution to effectively do that. And I think that's where the Democratic Party is failing. That's where we're falling short, is we don't have those three things together. You could have Pritzker saying one thing, Harris saying another thing, Mr. Jeffries saying a different thing, Schumer's on a whole nother page. Why aren't we coordinated in this moment? Why aren't we landing punches in this moment? It really baffles my mind. Again, how do we get to discipline if we're not all saying the same thing? How do we get to attracting some of these voters that we lost in the last election if we're not reaching them where they are through this, an aggressive modern distribution channels? We've talked about this, you and I, before, an influencer strategy. Why doesn't the Democratic Party have an aggressive, big, broad influencer strategy? That as I mentioned earlier, you got conservatives that are building, they're investing in new talent. Can I just say something slightly provocative? Why hasn't the Democratic Party funded Joy-Ann Reid yet? Why haven't they given her $2 million to launch a platform? It baffles my mind. She's not going to go back to being a traditional journalist. That whole thing is dead. Trump killed that whole thing. So my thing is, like, why not fund her? She's got an entire audience. Why not fund her so that she can be behind utilizing the apparatus to really get to the distribution issue, so that people can start to understand what's really going on here and understand who is to blame for it. So that's sort of some of my top line thoughts about what needs to happen that's actually currently not happening. But here's the two things, if you don't mind me saying this. The problem that the Democratic Party is having right now is an identity crisis. It's a major one. I don't think we know who we are. If you look at, the data, we've been bleeding our core constituency since 2012. So who are we as a party? What do we stand for? What principles are grounding the party? And then I think the second big issue is a crumbling infrastructure. We just talked about this. The distribution channels, the state parties are the oldest part of the democratic apparatus. People always assume it's Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden, but the reality is it's these state parties that are dated, that are aging, that we're not no longer investing in. So it's a distribution channel. It's the state parties. It is investing in new talent that I think is going to make the difference. And I would say training would be probably the third biggest thing that I think we had, that sort of falls under that crumbling infrastructure that we have to address. This last cycle, you and I heard this from people on the ground that we didn't run ground operations in 20 because we were in the middle of COVID, so we lost some ground. And this last cycle, you had people running states for Kamala Harris that had never run them before, that had no idea how to run a ground operation. So we've got to get back to that OFA training Democratic operatives again, to really get on the ground and penetrate on a ground level. So that's, again, I think all the ways in which we need to make people feel it. It's that coordination, it's the discipline, and it's the distribution.
Well, Ashley, thank you. I want to say thank you for spending some time sharing some thoughts. I We've got to find a way to get folks like you, especially who have seen, we've never seen what we're seeing before, but we've seen
Yeah,
peace. Even if the some of the players and the people are the same, uh, this is a new playbook. We are in a new digital first age. The distribution channels have changed. How people communicate has changed. And it's something I keep trying. I lead with. It's a scary fact I lead with both clients and even when I talk politically, is that half of the internet, 50% of internet traffic is automated. It's AI automated
totally,
there. So even though that is TV, radio, none of that drives what people are feeling. What drives it is here. Is like it's
totally.
ultimately
But
a
even,
streaming device.
even so, I mean, have you gotten any ads on your phone or on television that are talking about how Donald Trump is tanking and almost intentionally tanking the economy, and that he's to blame for it? That the cost of eggs, the cost of gas, the cost of my champagne, right, is going up because of Donald Trump. That the world is more dangerous because of Donald Trump. That this bill is going to impact everybody from the top all the way down in the economy. You, we're not
There's no
even doing a
always on
damn
messaging.
deal.
There needs to be always on messaging to consistently remind you, because what he's doing in both organically and inorganic ways is almost shielding, deflecting, finding ways for people not even to understand what's happening. But
But, but Kim, he also ran for 4 years. I mean, he ran against Joe Biden when Joe Biden was in the White House for 4 effing years. And people don't underestimate that, the impact of that. We're not even running against Donald Trump right now. Like, why aren't we knocking this thing out the park every day? It really baffles my mind. And that's how he was able to make those gains in those Democratic strongholds that we saw in the last election. He didn't like wait until October like the Democratic Party typically does to go talk to black people. He literally spent 4 years doing it. I mean, when did he go to Detroit? It was like probably year one or two of Biden's presidency, right? Spewing mis and disinformation, falsehoods. It didn't really matter. I mean, but he was there showing up. And we're not showing up in any sort of way, from our phones to the digital ads to the distribution to seeing you on television to seeing you protesting. Like, we're not seeing any of it anywhere. It's kind of incredible. And it's a major failure. And it's just, again, as I've been saying on television everywhere else, we're just squandering the opportunity.
Ash, we could talk about this all day, and
You know
I
we
would
could,
love
and
to,
we do.
and we do.
I
Um,
love you. This is
I
great.
love you too. Thank you so much for having being on. Thanks for this.
And hopefully we'll see each other in the next war room. Hopefully the Democrats get their SHIT together soon enough and hire smart people like us. That's the next generation of politicos to really engage in what we know and leverage what we know and what we've seen. I mean, you and I have been in so many rooms and are so smart and so advanced, and we've been telling the party many of these things for months. I mean, I remember you and I were in the 2020 war room. We're bleeding support among black men. It's not going to be enough to, you know what I mean? Like, to throw some rapper at it. Like, it's not going to be enough in the 11th hour. And so hopefully the party gets smart and realizes that some of its biggest problems is that they've had the same people at the table for way too long.
I feel you. I feel you. Well, thank you again for joining me this
Thank you for having me.
afternoon. It gave some really good game. Um, we've gotta
A lot of work
use
to do.
this moment. We've got to use this moment and recognize. And I'm encouraged that I think a lot of the behind the scenes conversations are happening, but I think that's another thing is the speed of which we are trying something, as opposed to like, oh, we've got to get it right and
Totally.
like
Yeah,
figure this
yeah,
perfect
absolutely.
thing out. It's like, bro,
It doesn't work that way.
there's money to
Yeah,
be there's money to be spent. There are people who care. It's not even just a necessarily a money game. There's an opportunity right now because what we are seeing in real time is everything we know about the system come down. And some people would argue, hey, you know what, tear some of these things down because it hasn't worked for us. But
yeah.
people are going to feel the brunt of that when they, like you said, whether it's their champagne, their grapes, their eggs, their bread, the little knickknacks they need for their businesses or at home, or to order it on
Or
Amazon or
or
Walmart.
people like me whose parents need Medicare and Medicaid, right? I mean, there's a lot of us that take care and are caregivers for our parents that are going to be affected by this bill in so many different ways that we're not even talking about or even thinking about.
Yeah. So
So
I'm definitely gonna over the next few weeks and months, and as we go continue to tap in with you. I think there was just a little bit of latency at the end of this, so that's why you see for those who are watching or seeing me, but your words are coming through loud and clear. Thanks for joining me, Miss
all
Ashley
right.
Etienne. We need to get you your own show.
I know.
To
People
any
keep
of the
saying
funders
it.
and listening or
You know
networks.
I'm shy though. You know I'm shy
Uh,
ultimately.
uh, I mean, well, then don't go on camera. Just do a strictly audio podcast. Maybe we can bring you over here to the Hit Politics Network. But
Yeah.
anyways, but
You're,
Ashley,
you're
thank you
making
again
an
for.
offer. Making an offer. Okay.
I'll make you an offer. Thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you for
I
having me.
appreciate you. Appreciate your voice on TV. I appreciate the intelligence, the insight, and for somebody who's kind of like I said, I think you're really playing a key role in part because so many people can see themselves in you or understand and how you're able to break things down in such a simple but I would say thoughtful way. Please keep doing what you're doing. And
Thank you
with
for your
that,
best. Same to you.
appreciate it.
You got
And with that, this is another episode of the Hip Politics Podcast, and we are out.
it.
Peace.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.